answer though. Just his father is here, so I have to say he doesn't answer. But he's outstanding. Thank you very much. Secondly, for the next 3 weeks, we're not going to have a shiur. I'm going to be out of town, so I'm sorry. And looking forward to see you on the 18th. On the 18th is Thursday, 18th of July. Simcha, it's your platform now. Okay. Go ahead. You want the microphone? You don't need the microphone? Go ahead.
Just to steal your thunder a little bit, I'll just give the introduction. The first page there that Zvika has the news story. So what that story was and what originated this question was the story that happened in Bangladesh, where this pregnant woman came in to deliver her baby. And after delivering her baby, she was told everything was fine. She recovered, she went home, and came back about a month or two later. It says in there the details exactly, but in pain. And they realized she's pregnant, and now she's still pregnant, she's pregnant with twins. And as it turns out, she has this congenital anomaly, a birth defect, where she has essentially a duplication of the uterus. It's called uterine didelphys. And as it turns out, she was pregnant with one baby in one of the uteri and a twin pregnancy in the second.
Wow. How long after the first delivery was it?
It was about a month or two.
One month.
So Tzvika's question, I think, has to do with Pidyon Haben.
We have many questions, so we'll start soon with the questions.
And so when Zvika first did bring the question to me, and I think that was the sentiment on the email when you presented the topic, was we're talking about the uterus here that's being duplicated, but all the more so you still wanted to hear about the anatomy, what is it that we're talking about, and is there potentially a interesting question here?
The same father, all three children.
For that lady, yes, but I'm sure you can find a case report. I'm sure where there were twins where there were. Yeah, that'll be a different.
Next week.
It's actually a tosis in Soita. Soita and bed.
So my goal here for the first few minutes.
We never thought it could be.
A few weeks ago.
So the goal here in the first few minutes is to establish. Is just to establish what is normal anatomy, how does the anatomy develop, and try to do it in the most basic terms as I can, just so that we are kind of like on the same page about what it is that we're talking about. So, let's see if this responds. Sorry, it's a little bit slow. It's a little bit slow. There we go. Hopefully it doesn't jump like 3 ahead. Okay, so this slide depicts essentially what is going on. Yeah, we got the focus there. Okay, so from the left on 9 weeks to, we're talking about when the female fetus is developing, and she's developing what will be her uterus. At 9 weeks, what is represented there are 2 tubes that are fused together, the Mullerian tubes. They fuse together in the midline. And what's depicted in the first picture as uterine septum. Let me see if it'll come up here. No pointer. I should have brought a pointer. But the uterine septum that they're showing there eventually actually resorbs, or it goes through what's called cellular apoptosis, where it disintegrates, if you will, leaving together one formed cavity that by the time that the female is born essentially resembles what looks like a normal uterus. And I think what I did here to make this a little bit easier to depict this, let's see if I can get this going, full screen. There we go. Okay, oh, sorry, let's do it again. There we go. So this is like a cartoon of what is happening, right? It's going to hopefully play in a loop, but I'm sure I can do that too. But what's happening there, we'll start again. You have the 2 tubes kind of fused towards the side. Where they fuse, that what looks like a septum eventually resorbs to leave one cavity. And that is connected also to the birth canal, the vaginal canal. So just complete a couple of times of these paramesonephric ducts. Oh, perfect. Okay, thank you, Avi. So the 2 tubes on the side here where they fuse, this septum normally resorbs, leaving together a one unified cavity. And this is attached to what eventually becomes the birth canal. So as this stretches out, and we'll see, so this is normal development. I'll show you some depictions of what could be abnormal development. So this is in utero.
Embryo.
When the fetus is developing, when a girl
3 months,
is developing
6
in
months,
utero.
9 months.
And as Dr. Agustin Sr. could tell you, that a lot of these patients that have anomalies may see urologists too, because the development is very closely related to the kidney development, and a lot of women with uterine anomalies also have kidney anomalies. Right? All right. So this is a detailed drawings of what could be different anomalies. So what happens when it goes wrong? So we'll start down here, because this mostly resembles the normal, other than that septum that's in the middle. So if you remember from the cartoon, that area in the middle where it eventually resorbs, here it's not. Okay, so that's what's called the uterine septum. The next degree up would be with that septum extend through the entire cavity and even to the opening of the cervix. And what is actually also very common is for that septum to continue. What's not depicted here nicely in these drawings is this would be the birth canal, right? After you have the cervix, this is the birth canal before the exit of the body. But this septum actually can continue along the length of the birth canal or the vagina, and it's called the vaginal septum. And there's essentially one vaginal opening from the outside, but the vagina can be divided into 2 compartments.
Could you have implantation in both compartments of an embryo?
Yes. So you can have a twin pregnancy with one on either side. And so kind of moving our way up, this is like the more...
The formation is what's abnormal, not necessarily the pregnancy.
Right, it's the fusion, we call fusion defects, because it's those tubes fusing together, and something going wrong with that fusion that you end up with a defect. So in these final 3 ones, you're talking about where these 2 tubes didn't quite even come together all the way. So you don't have that nice round top. Like the 2 tubes that we had, they didn't quite fuse together normally, and you have, this would be the uterine bicornate uterus, where you have 2 corns or horns to the uterus. This would be another version of that, where you have even decreased amounts of fusion, so the 2 cavities are totally divided. And this is what this lady in Bangladesh had, which is, it's called uterine didelphys. So you have 2 completely separated uterine horns, each with their own cervices, and this, what's depicted here, right here, is that septum of the vagina that actually would continue down through the birth canal. And yeah, you can have a pregnancy, a singleton pregnancy, in one or in either horn, I should say. You can have a twin pregnancy with one in each. You can have a twin pregnancy with the twins in one horn and the other one's empty.
Is there only one vaginal opening in that case?
So this was my question to speak of, like, what is a vaginal opening? And, so from the outside of the body, there's one introitus. But the vaginal canal can be divided into 2 by vaginal septum.
How far distal?
All the way to the introitus. Yeah.
In that case, that happened. It created the 2
So in her anatomy, I don't know what her vaginal anatomy is, but I would say that in cases of uterine didelphys, there's almost always a vaginal septum.
Is the ovarian cycle, is the cycle different when it's like this as opposed to just a standard uterus? Same cycle.
Yeah. So we're not talking about like ovaries, tubes, hair. That's what was last year, I think, that we did. But the hormones are, in the ovaries going to be regulated the same in a woman with an anomaly versus not. And actually, most of these women are essentially what we call asymptomatic. They don't really know until they maybe can't get pregnant or have trouble with pregnancy. Yes.
In all these scenarios.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. So it's only one, but the eggs release at the same time then theoretically.
I mean, in any twin pregnancy, it can be. I mean, for that lady in Bangladesh, I would imagine that she ovulated one from either ovary.
What's the most different?
Well, you can ovulate. Yeah, you can ovulate from. Oh, what happened to my laser? My giant laser. There it is. You can ovulate from this ovary and be picked up in this tube and plant here, but also ovulate from this ovary, be picked up by this fallopian tube.
Oh my God!
Yeah, and that can happen in a normal female, in a normal anatomy.
So it can cross from either uterus.
What was the reason for the delay?
In this woman?
Right. By a month, 2 months?
The body wasn't ready. I mean, it just wasn't in labor. The one uterus was contracting, but the other wasn't.
But was it because of this setup that it happened?
That it's
Meaning, it doesn't seem like necessarily that there should be a later birth just because of the fact that she had this. As opposed to the person
was the first delivery 7 month Was it
I
premature?
don't know, I would imagine that it
didn't
was.
Probably
but it
7
was,
months, and then
And that can happen with the
He
regular
didn't
uterus
say.
as well, right?
Because that,
This
what,
doesn't
yeah,
necessarily
what
cause
happens,
But when you have twins in one uterus, you
Hell,
don't have the delayed delivery. They don't
so if we just talk about, if we want to talk just for argument's sake, the most common case would be, let's say whether you're talking about, the double uterus or where there's just one side and you have one pregnancy on one side, because the capacity of the uterus is less, those women are at predisposition for preterm labor, preterm birth.
Especially here, you have
Yeah.
twins plus one, so here you have triplets. Is
Can I be, but isn't the fact of the matter that it wouldn't go into labor, the fact that makes it that there has to be a separate canal? Because wouldn't the canal open up and or drop out just from the aspect of baby one
Yeah.
that happened a month early,
Yeah.
two babies
So the
happened.
cervix dilates and
So
then
cervix
comes out
dilates,
the
so
vaginal
the
canal.
other
Twins.
was closed, obviously didn't come
The
out.
cervix, right.
So is that the cervix is a separate cervix or is
Yeah,
it?
it was a
Yeah,
separate
you
cervix.
go back,
Separate
Simcha, go back to this previous
Yeah.
slide showing. There's
Yeah.
two different
Yeah.
cervixes
See
here.
here. See,
Two different
one
uteruses.
cervical open,
Wow.
so two different, those are the cervixes.
Are they conceived at the same time?
They have to.
But it can be if
Yeah, but
two
it's
fathers in different time
cervixes. So one
pregnancy.
came out, and the other one didn't.
Ask your insurance. We can have insure. So,
I wonder because
so
of what you
this
said.
is more types of the same thing of what we were just looking at, but it shows you a little bit more variation and a more more straightforward cartoon form. And again, I think just look at this. If you can imagine this upside down T not there, that would essentially represent like the normal, where you have like one unified cavity, one cervix, and one birth canal. So just take that away. That's the normal. This would be also pretty close to normal, where there's just a very mild, what we call arcuate uterus, where that resorption didn't completely happen. These women essentially have normal obstetrical outcomes. Same, usually like normal. So you can imagine here, so this is the one we kind of want to focus on, I think, where you have two kind of separated uterine cavities, each with its own cervical opening, and also each with its own, if you will, birth canal, right? You have this vaginal septum that goes all the way. I would say that in theory, or practicality, because again, so you go again to what his topics of the question are, but a baby coming through the birth canal, the first baby coming through, would essentially destroy that septum. So that septum functionally gets torn or ripped. We usually have to surgically remove that, and essentially you end up after the birth of the first child with a unified vaginal cavity. In practice. Okay, I'll let you talk in theory.
Simcha, in a single uterus, which is carrying a twin pregnancy, are there reported cases of delay of the twin? And what is the length of that time? What's
I
the
don't know
longest?
the records are, but
Weeks,
it
months?
can be weeks or maybe a couple months, especially very preterm. Like you have like a 23 or 24 week loss of a twin or delivery of a twin, you can delay to.
How do they do that? Because the cervix is already open.
But
somehow the job stays up.
Yeah, you just don't.
One could hold on to the ankle of the other.
Yeah.
It closes back up. I mean, what
That's a different share.
But he was red-headed or not?
I have a whole share of like obstetrics in the Torah of all the. That's probably a different kind of pregnancy. But so the other one to probably focus on is this. So 6 and 10 are probably the two anomalies that we're kind of focused on, right? Where you kind of seems to be you have two sides of the uterus or separated uterus, whereas here it's more of a true separation. Again, it's two uteri because the one normal one failed to fuse normally, so you end up with a duplicate. But I think those cases I point out, number 6 and number 10, because they have that septum all the way through the vaginal canal as well, which I think was the big question that was posed on the email. Like, what's the big question? We're talking about uterus versus birth canal. But I'll let you. So that's the science.
How does this happen? Is it genetics? Is it?
It's just a birth defect. It's not necessarily hereditary, but it is just a defect in the development of that.
And some people will never find out, right?
Yeah.
Some people.
We'll find out in the first question. We'll find out. Okay. Simcha, thank you very much. I need some help still, so don't run away. Okay. Turn into page 4. I am going to ask you around 6 or 7 questions of 6 or 7 cases how it could happen. All of a sudden, now we were telling us that it's impossible it will happen. Let's see how it could happen. First of all, page number 4, I was asked by Rabbi Gamliel Rabinovich, הנה אישה שיש לה 2 רחמים, Okay, it's two uterus or two wombs? I'm not so sure what you said.
Uterus.
Uterus, okay. וברחם אחד הגיע 7 ילדים עם ניתוח. She had an operation with 7 children. The 8th one was without an operation, without a surgery. The doctor said that it was from a different womb, different uterus. First time. We have right now 2 times Pidyon Haben. The first one was a son, was a Pidyon Haben. Now the last one, again, the new uterus. So we have a Pidyon Haben. 2 times Pidyon Haben.
So if I'm understanding, you're saying something like this, where the first 7 babies were on the one side, and then the 8th baby came on the other side.
No, because but remember, she had C-section. The reason they said that is because of the C-section for the first 7 children. So all of a sudden, they didn't do a VBAC. So if now they're bringing another child, they figured, well, it can't be from the original uterus, it must be from a different uterus. That's what they said.
Okay, that's what the doctor said. Right, and we believe the doctor. Actually, that's another Akiva some sort of.
Because when someone's had multiple C-sections,
but that's another
the uterus will rupture when you try to deliver.
It's not a din in the lady that she already gave birth.
We'll see. That's the question. The truth of the matter, we'll see the Chakira later on. Is it the din of the baby, of the Peter Rechem, or the Rechem, or the din of the mother? We'll see. Machloek is between Osameach, Shevet Halevi. That's the Lomdish part. I want to get to the questions. I understand the question. Question number 2. This person, I owe him quite a lot. Is Chaim Isha Feldman. He is the rabbi of the Asuta Hospital. He put me together. Actually, Sydney was with me at the time. We went to visit all the Bank Hazera, the sperm bank, and learned all what it is. And since then, I've devoted quite a lot of time, probably some money as well, some resources to this issue. And he asked a question, a very interesting question. זוג היו נשואים 10 שנים. האישה עברה 10 הפלות, ובצר להם נפרדו. They were married for 10 years, and they had to separate. They didn't have any children. Both of them got remarried. And all of a sudden, they remarried, and then all of a sudden, she had children. You couldn't understand. The miscarriages were in one uterus, and somehow she got pregnant in the other uterus. The question is, the question when was the miscarriage? If the miscarriage was before 40 days, then if it's after 40 days, then she doesn't have a Pidyon Haben altogether. That's the question. But if it's a different uterus, maybe she should have a Pidyon Haben.
But can you tell that? Can you tell that from one between the 2 uteri?
They detected it by ultrasound.
Yeah, clinically you can tell, right side, left side.
But didn't you say when the babies come out, she had 10 hapalot? How did they not destroy the septum?
That was probably what Dr. Agassi was saying. Is that I didn't read the whole letter, but they were by C-section, right?
No.
But there's going to be a question. Is the Peter Rechem when they go through the cervix or they go through the vaginal canal? That's the key issue. Because if it's a cervix, then...
This is another article that we read here from the Moti Alperin, Rabbi Alperin, and
that's going to be key. That's going to be key.
That's a machloikis. What is the rechem? What is the rechem?
Yeah, does it have to open? Was the first child that opened up the vaginal canal, or the first one that goes through the cervix? I would say go through the cervix.
So the Rambam. Okay.
Still pull it the other way.
Now you know that a grandmother found out she had children. She had a daughter, and later on the daughter had another daughter. The other daughter was born without a womb or without a uterus. Okay, she was born without a uterus. So the grandmother donated the uterus to the granddaughter. She had a baby in Sweden. Now, let's assume they were Jewish. And the grandmother had a baby, the first baby, she had a boy. The same uterus is being now transferred to the granddaughter. She's going to have a boy.
Is it the person, or is it the mother, or is it the?
If it's the uterus that got opened, then maybe
this
not.
Is
her vagina they implanted it there.
Now,
is there a shiloh also that the grandmother for the husband to have relations?
No, that's not because it's a piece. They like the finger. There's no relation. He's asking. Ask the question again.
Last year.
Yeah.
I was here. We didn't speak about this specific case.
We did. No, not the grandmother. Right. Okay. The truth of the matter, all the IVF that we have right now, the case of IVF, what's going on? A Jewish woman does not have. She can't bear. She doesn't have the eggs. Let's assume, or sometimes she has the eggs. She cannot give birth. So somebody already else gave birth. She gave birth, and she is right now to be donating her house, so to speak, her birth. She is now the surrogate. Is it? And she is now a son. She had a son before. Does she have to? Because right now it's a different egg.
It's different genetic material.
A different genetic material. So,
but her rechem has already been opened by a previous child.
But the question
is,
okay. Again,
maybe it's a new child.
If it goes according to the mother, we asked before, what is the chakira? We asked, is it the peter rechem, what we call the womb, or no, it is the mother. If it is the mother,
for everything else, for yichos and all that
stuff. No, they're both considered mothers.
For yichos, we don't know who the mother is. There's a machloket between Rabbonim, and then right now the psak is, for the time being, the psak is that you have to have a gay, if it is a goy who gives the surrogate, or vice versa. If it's a goy, that you have to have a giyur, and we don't know who the real mother is. We know, but we don't know. Some people say, I try to prove, and I'll bring it again because that's the next question. I wrote an article, and I am in the opinion that in the next within 10 years we're going to have an artificial womb. Mm-hmm. I know. He doesn't believe it, okay? Some doctors do, some doctors don't. I do believe I do. But let's assume, like 25 years or 26 years ago, nobody believed that there will be IVF. The whole idea of IVF is new. Remember, I spoke to many Rabbonim at the time that beginning to say it's impossible. Later on they agreed, and now all of a sudden you have Mekayim, mitzvahs pruvu through IVF as well. Remember. Some of them still say no. So let's assume, just for the sake of discussion right now, I agree with you, that you disagree with me, I'll prove it to you. Because the first few weeks...
I can suspend reality.
The first few weeks it works, and the end of the few weeks the question
you just have a few months in between.
Right? That's the difference. But let's assume that it works. Do we have peter rechem? What's with the peter rechem? Oh, the mitzvah disappears? By the way, who is the mother?
Genetic material. It's got to be.
Is it the genetic mother? Moshe Sternbuch tells me the mother is
the carrier.
The
machine. Google.
Google.
That can't
So it may not be a machine. It may be that they take a uterus from a brain-dead donor and they keep it alive through infusions, and it will be in a human uterus. It won't be in a machine. It may be, but I think the first steps will probably, they'll take a brain-dead donor, they get their uterus, keep it alive somehow, and they'll be implanted in that. So there will be a womb. It'll be artificial. I mean, it won't be carried in a person. It'll be kept outside, but it won't be a box. It won't be like a dialysis machine. It'll be in a womb.
So
but it's not more likely. That's more likely than the other approach.
So let's turn to page number 11. It's Rabbi Duner, not our Rabbi Duner, his cousin, also originally from England. And he asked a question. He asked this first question: do we need to have Pidyon Haben for a kid that was born from the second uterus? However, he's asking one more question that we're going to see in a second on page number 12. A woman that has two uteruses, what does she do with bat nida? Efsek taira. She get to count 2 times?
Depends on the mitzvahs of her blood. They can overlap. Depends on the mitzvahs of her blood.
So he said the cycles
No, they're regulated by hormones.
No, but it could be that each one operates independently.
Probably it's not the same cycle. It is the same cycle?
No, I understand what you're saying. You're not even talking about pregnancy. You're just
No, not about pregnancy.
Yeah, so the woman knows that she has this anomaly. That she has to do bedika on both sides.
I thought you said her cycle's linked.
It's one vaginal canal.
No.
You're saying between,
No,
if she has a septum all the way.
You could theoretically
So she
have
does a
spotting on one side,
bedika, so she does a bedika on both sides.
But how would she
You'd have to
you're
do
saying
It's related to her bleeding.
No,
It's the vessel. You have to check on both sides. If she has a septum coming all the way down, the bedika cloth is put in on both sides. She sees where she's bleeding from.
So
Yeah, but the problem is
sometimes
that clean
she
and then-
cannot even have relationship.
Right. It could be
It comes
possible
out the whole month.
Nida.
She's need the whole month.
Well, but there would be 2 different times.
In different times.
A day or two, maybe.
But
Tell us what everyone
but it'll be more than just one week.
No, it's not. Supposedly,
He said it's hormonally. It's not affected by that septum.
He said only
Not
like a
affected by
day.
that septum.
Sometimes
So it'll go into either
here it
canal.
is.
I read that if a woman is pregnant on one side, it's not shy for her to get pregnant on the other side afterwards, because the eggs will not ovulate once the body will not let the egg out.
For the most part, that's true. There is something called super pregnancy where you can actually get pregnant while you're pregnant. It's very rare.
Right, that's the
extremely rare.
And that's shaykh in one also.
I'm talking about a normal anatomy, but certainly with
they could, it could happen. That definitely could happen. That's what I'm saying. It's for 2 men.
That's not to do with 2 things. It's not shaykh.
You want to speak about this? You want to speak about this? Yeah. Okay. So turn to page number 20. So we ask all the questions. I'm sorry.
What's the time you want to depends what you're marrying? You're marrying a woman.
I just want to show you at page 20 and 22 all the cases of the various 22, 23. You can see all the various situations. Symptom. You want to speak about each one? It's all the same, right? Okay, let's be so. Okay.
We have much interesting stuff.
And then, one more thing that I want before we go to the Lomdashi area is what is Rechem Belashon Chazal? On page number 27. And that's the Machloikis. What is the Peter Rechem? What is the Peter?
Cervix or vagina.
Cervix or vagina. Right. So let's look at the Pasuk in page number 32. I'm nothing. 33, I'm sorry. The Pasuk says, Kadesh li kol bchor peter rechem b'vnei Yisrael ba'adam u'ba'behema liyu. And then Bamidbar, Achpadot tivdeh et bchor ha'adam ve'et bchor ha'behema atmea. So still, kol peter rechem v'chol basar she'akrivu la'Hashem. We know who are not, says the, let's see the Rambam page number 34. Nisas esel livdot kol ish miYisrael bno shu bchor li'imo Yisraeli. The father is responsible to be poideh to a mother who is an Israeli mother. If she is a Levia or she is a Kohenet, she is potu. Then there's no the same halacha tesvav. I just want to learn this halacha. חתך העובר במאה והוציאו עבר, if they have a cesarean,
abortion. In this case, הוציאו
עבר. Right, abortion, אין לו פטר רחם, it's a miscarriage. And then תזין יוצא דופן והבא אחריו כדרכו, שניהם פטורים. If it is miscarriage, there's no, definitely there's no Peter Rechem. And the second one, also the baby that comes after that, also there's no Poidim. Now, I talked to you about Efsek Tahara. Efsek Tahara, definitely, each one, from each Rechem, you look at it as if you have a complete new baby. A new baby, a new issue of Nida from every Rechem, because the blood is a blood. And however, we cannot learn from here if you have two Rechems, and therefore we have two Pidyon Haben. The fact that, because like...
Nida is Nida, and it's not different.
However, there is... no, so maybe not here yet. Just 1 second, yeah. And then we go to the Hakira. Is it the issue? Is the woman? And there is one woman, and therefore the first baby is Pidyon Haben, the second Rechem, the third Rechem, the fourth Rechem, there is no Pidyon Haben. Oh no, we look at Rechem. Soon enough we'll see the Nafkamina. I'll tell you though.
Stop for 1 second.
Yeah.
If the first baby is born with a cesarean, right? And the second, so he doesn't go through the Rechem.
It doesn't go through Rechem, the first baby?
Right, cesarean.
Oh, cesarean.
Right, okay. Baby afterwards.
It's also potter.
Oh, potter. Potter. It's Halachah Tetzai. Potter. But this is because it's the same Rechem. But
wait. Why is it the same Rechem? But the first one's not a Peter Rechem. It never went through the Rechem.
Right. But if there is a second Rechem with another baby, maybe it's completely different. That's what I'm saying.
Why? But that would prove it's the din of the woman.
You're saying Rechem is uterus in that case.
Pardon?
You're saying Rechem means uterus.
Then you see it.
I hear. Just give me a minute. We'll get. First of all, there was an Agadata. Moshe Rabbeinu was born after Aaron, and was born after Miriam. Then there is an Agadata. Yair Dvash brings an Agada that when Moshe was born, his mother was a Besula. And he preached Moshe number 49. You've never seen it before, I know. באמת הכל לטובת, it's a Zohar actually. כוונת הזוהר לטובת מוישה וקדושתו. Turn to page number 49. כי כסיב קדש לי כל בכור, כל פטר רחם, כי פטר רחם קודם להשם. ונאמר בראובן כוחי יתר שאת, כי כל פטרי רחם קודש להשם, ולכל יחסר גם קדושה זו למוישה, חזרה לנעוריה, the woman became all of a sudden young, והייתה בתולה כמקודם, ונולד ממנה מוישה, והרי הוא פטר רחם קודש להשם. מוישה רבינו, אגדתה, too, we don't learn from אגדתה, but all of a sudden there's a reason. You can see that the second one was the first Aaron was probably the Bchor, then it was Miriam, and then still
Miriam was older than
Moshe. Wouldn't need
Aaron was
Pidyon Haben.
she was 126.
I'm sorry,
3 years old. Still time, there's not sad. Moshe would need a Pidyon Haben. You think Kedusha is Bchor, you want to make him, give him a Kedusha. Bakasha, to make him a Peter Rechem.
Oh, he called him Peter Rechem.
Came from the second uterus.
But you could find that the Peter Rechem after a cesarean is also Peter Rechem. But it's not a Peter Rechem, that's Mechayev, because it's Mishta B'chor. And you need two Tanoim. You need a Tanoim for B'chor and a Tanoim for Peter Rechem. So you're Peter Rechem without being a B'chor.
One more question that I'm going to ask on an Aloche, if two twins were born together. The Aloche is Sofek, and you don't have to, a Kohen doesn't get anything, because it's momentous.
If you gave it already.
Why? Says the Gemara, we see the Gemara, the Mishnah says, I efshar letzamtzem. Is it today the same halacha I efshar letzamtzem?
Yeah, because Vahi b'chatzos, why does the Gemara says, the Chumash says Vahi b'chatzos, kachatzoy, when he told, because physically it's impossible to do simultaneity. And in physics, they deal with that.
Doctors cannot do it simultaneously.
No, the issue of something, two actions happening exactly at the same time, simultaneity. So the Chazal certainly said that there's machlokes tanoim whether
I agree with you. At the time they couldn't have
We can't even with an atomic clock. You can't do it.
You cannot tell the clock.
I mean, Einstein, the simultaneity with two electrons in two different places. They also can't mamish with the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. They mamish cannot tell the two things are happening exactly the same time.
I don't know. I know. At the time the Gemara said this is B'dei Shamayim, by the way. But why cannot we decide today why the Psak Halacha Kohen doesn't get his 5 shloim? He should get 5 shloim from the parents,
because you can't tell.
Why? That's why I don't understand. I still don't understand why I can't.
You can't. By the way, even in physics, you can't tell the velocity and the location of an electron at the same time. That's part of because we measure it with it's technical. How you even the measuring the wavelength of the light that measures where something is already affects the measurement. So even in modern physics today, they understand that there's you can't have simultaneity. Now,
they know what it's going to be. It's not where they can't. They know where it's going.
But at the exact location you can't. So when Chazal said "Ein efshar l'tzamtzem," it was almost recognizing modern way we think of things modern. Certainly, two children coming out at the same time. How are you going to detect which one came out at the same time?
No, both of them came together.
Yeah, but how one always precedes the other by. You're not going to say. Do we have any measuring techniques to be able to tell that?
No, they're not coming out. They're not coming out the exact same time.
He's saying one after the other. And you never. He wants to say if two heads come out. You still can't really figure it out.
The Gemara says that we have a suffix. The Gemara says suffix. What's the suffix?
Because
we don't know who was it. Yeah, that's something else. But if they don't come together, there's no suffix.
Never.
Okay.
One is always going to come before. You just don't know which one it is. So I'm going to Maxhaber
Why?
Oh no, he's talking about a case where two heads are coming out exactly at the same time. You can't tell which. That's what they both presented the same.
You can't tell which.
You can tell now, but
so the Kohen we can always claim to the Kohen, you bring me a raya that you know which one came first. So that's why it's potter.
Another raya, Rav Alperin, is trying to bring from a Gemara in page number 52.
Well, just to clarify, so you're saying that one can come out and then go back in, and then the other one will come out, like, isn't the first one out?
Are you asking me or asking him?
He was asking not about the simple case where one child comes out and the other child comes out. We know which one is a bechor. He's talking about when two heads present itself exactly at the same time. And Ein efshar l'tzamtzem. How are you going to figure out which one actually came first? It's a suffix which one came first.
Or are you potentially asking about the case where one went first into the birth canal and then they maybe switched position? Like
No. I asked about that. The Gemara didn't have the switch. The Gemara asked
at the same time.
We came out at the same time. Fine. At the time of the Gemara couldn't tell. Today, with science, I figured you could.
Okay. If you could tell, then it's not a suffix.
Yeah, but that's
right. That's what I'm saying. What is the suffix?
Because doctors certainly don't have mechanisms at a birth location to figure out, like with a laser or that's what's going to require to decide which one comes out first.
Get there for the Olympics.
Has anyone brought up Siamese twins? Come up.
Siamese up the Gemara. Sure, the Gemara says the two Oshim. The Gemara talks about the case of two. One person would come out with two heads together. The Gemara says it's not coming.
So what do you do by Pidyon Haben?
Because it's a puzzle. There's going to be one or Vadai one. Or there was something.
So one thing. So what is it? Do we have to Pidyon Haben on this?
No, I don't think so. But I don't know. We just had it in Bechoros.
Yeah, everything in Bechoros now.
We finished Bechoros.
Why can't you just do the Pidyon on both of them?
No, that's
if you remember,
it's a mum and dick.
Okay, no, so do it on both.
No, it's only one body. It's only one body. What's the difference? Because there are two heads.
No, he's definitely
two heads are fused. It's going to be two heads.
No, give
it's two people.
They both don't have complete bodies.
At the brain, and you can't separate it.
This question for child A or child B.
It's very rare.
No, but you might have to know which one it is.
Why?
Page number 52. The Gemara, this interesting Gemara that we learned just a couple of months ago, probably 3 or 4 months ago. It big shnei rechamim.
The two
animals got together, and somehow one animal donated,
it gave birth
transferred the baby into the other baby, into the other animal. So that's the Gemara. So comes Rav Alperin, and he wants from here to bring a raya. Why the Gemara brings such a case? Gemara can bring a case that there were two uterus.
It's
two rechem. The Gemara does not have a case of two rechems. The Gemara talks about one rechem into another. From there raya that such a case, says Rav Alperin, from there raya, such a case that you don't have Pidyon Haben. Otherwise the Gemara will bring it. I'm sorry.
But those were animals, right?
That's right. Those were animals. We talk about animals, even an animals the Gemara didn't bring. Is it possible that this case would be in the animals as well?
Theoretically, I'm not a veterinarian, but I would
assume. I assume the Gemara compares it.
Because the Gemara didn't bring a case of an animal with two rechems, he wants to bring a diet.
Right. Diet that there's no Pidyon Haben and two.
That's a pretty far deep.
I said to him, the Gemara did not know about this case. Can we say that the Gemara did not know about this case?
He didn't know about the animals in South America.
Yeah, but it's not a raya for the momentness. But the case of Pidyon Haben, you have to make a Pidyon Haben.
No, but over here by animal. There would always be a suffix in the time of Gemara if it was a second uterus. How are you ever going to know? They're going to have to cut open the mother and find the second uterus?
Maybe.
So, it's so rare. By the way, Simcha, what is this? 1 in 3 million?
Maybe,
the two uterus.
What
is this? 50 million.
I was told.
It's usually rare. So they would consider Slav Shkia.
I was told.
So the Chacham don't have to worry about it.
Yeah. This is more common.
That's also not the case of the Gemara. But it's strange to say from there to bring a raya that it doesn't exist. I said it doesn't exist at the time of the Gemara. It didn't exist. Today it exists.
No,
the Gemara didn't know.
You don't have to say that. It could be existed at the time of the Gemara, but why should the Gemara talk about it? Either because it's like Shia, or even if you want to say that they would talk about it, even if it's like Shia, it would always be a suffix.
No, but it would be for... No, it would be...
Rav Meir's Chayes from Utah. Chazal or not. So
but
Rav Meir, she don't hold
more common than the animal hitting... It's more common than passing the baby from one to the other animal.
Then the
That's why the Gemara didn't talk about it. That's the big... What's the whole raya? That the Gemara didn't talk about it because there's no way to know. It'd always be regular. Might say something else raya.
Okay, come Shevet HaLevi on page number 54.
No. General law is because you can never bring a raya on something someone didn't say. You can't bring a raya on someone didn't say. Because there are a billion reasons someone didn't say something, right?
So the Gemara. The Gemara would bring the case.
You have to prove that it's more cheap.
Okay, that's what I'm saying. Okay. So he's saying, Shevet HaLevi was asked the question if the baby was born in the tubes.
Ectopic.
Yeah, ectopic. And then, is it considered peterech? And later on, the baby was born peterech. It was born outside.
Yeah, but it's not. But that's Chashash to say because there they operate. They go into the abdomen and go into the fallopian tube and remove the child. The rechem is never touched.
Right. I know, but the question would be. I think to boil down the question would be: is an ectopic pregnancy considered like a miscarriage, like Gemara said, where you have the miscarriage and then the normal birth of your
But a miscarriage normally comes through the uterus.
Comes through the rechem.
Here the rechem was never involved. Here there would be more of a tzad to say that there is peter rechem because it's completely extra uterine. The first ectopic pregnancy completely exists outside of the uterus. You can even have a pregnancy out, not even in the tube, right? Can't you have pregnancies intraperitoneal?
Therefore, he's saying such a case. He's saying that the rechem
There would be a period. That you can understand.
Why?
Because it never touched the uterus.
Even though
C-section.
Even though there were two babies. So it's not according to the mother. It's not the mother.
No, but the stage
because it's the
when we have a case of again coming back to the case of the cesarean, no one said that the one who comes after the cesarean is potter because the cesarean was a suga peter rechem, right? Who says such a thing? The Rambam doesn't say such a lashon, right? You can't say the cesarean. The Rambam says mitnei shezeh ba. There was an acher here.
Okay.
So I don't
but
care.
He's not chol. That's what.
What's that?
Because he's not chol. He's not chol anymore.
Why? Why isn't he b'chor?
Because there was another one.
Because there was another one. So what do you care? It says the first baby came from fallopian tubes, wherever they came from.
So you came from fallopian tubes. So he's a b'chor.
He could be a b'chor, right?
He's a b'chor, and the second one is also a b'chor.
No, the second one can't be a b'chor.
He's a b'chor.
The second one can't be. Why should it be different?
Because he was through the fallopian tubes.
The difference is that there it's a pre-harechem. Over here it's not a pre-harechem.
Right.
Like the doctor.
It has nothing to do with the rechem. Right.
Yeah. The Rambam's case is it was in the rechem.
But why would anybody assume that from the Rama? Because it was in the rechem. Where does it say so?
The Gemara, is it a b'chor levlados, or it's certainly not a peter rechem coming out doifen, but that's a b'chor levlados, and you need both.
We don't want it to be a peter rechem, or else the first one would be chayav.
Right, so you need, but you need both. You need b'chor levlados and it had to be a peter rechem. In the case of the cesarean, like you said, it's not a peter rechem, but it's b'chor levlados, and you need two criteria to make it a b'chor.
The first baby.
That's what the Gemara says.
But if the first baby,
that's what you said here.
Yeah. But if the first baby was never in the rechem.
Like in a case like in the topic.
The ba'acharav can't be a b'chor.
Why? Oh, because it's not also it lacks the b'chor levlados.
But it was a baby before him. Who cares where that baby came from? He took it out of the throat, right? The ma'isa doesn't make a difference. If there's no din in the first one was in a rechem. Who says that? The Ram doesn't say such a thing. There's no such lashon anywhere that the first one was in some sort of a rechem. Miyamar kacha. Why would anybody?
No, but that's you assume that it was. That's what the Rambam is talking about because extrauterine pregnancies are extremely rare. But in a Charan, you need you want to say it's still a b'chor levlados when it came out in top.
That's what when you say it's a doifen, you assume it means doifen. I want to see the Rambam.
Outside of the uterus.
It didn't שחלה או בחצוצרה, אף שהגיע לפעמים למציאות של תחילת ריקום, אבל כיוון שמונח במקום העומד להפסיד ההיריון, מעיקר אינו עומד בריקום, וממילא לא שייך שיפתור הוולד הבא אחריו. It means the blood הבא אחריו.
Oh, that's because it's not...
Because it's not considered blood.
Why? So it was born? Was this a born, not a live child?
A blood that is not considered...
Because the Rav Vosner case, was it a good child or was it a miscarriage? What, was that a Vlad? What happened to him?
According to him, it cannot be, according to another doctor that I spoke to, told me that it cannot be a baby that cannot be only in the... This
is the case you said in the tube.
Well, in the tube.
So it was not viable.
So it was not viable.
So it was not viable. So he's saying, so it is a so it has both. It's b'chor levlados and b'chor lepeterach of the second one. So that's why
the other one was never a vlad.
Because the other one was not really a vlad, is what he's saying.
That didn't wrap
so much the random organ. It's not considered a kid.
Because it wasn't a kid because he wasn't a kid.
There are rare case reports of abdominal pregnancies carrying to the third trimester.
Okay, so that would be the shaila. Because there would be, but according to the Svara, it would not be a b'chor levlados. So again, even the one that comes through the peterach would not be a peterach.
You just say
is that what you wanted to say?
Let's say the woman donated an egg. Let's say the woman donated an egg to someone else, and then it had a full baby, a regular baby, just a surrogate.
No, but there the egg was extracted before anything.
What?
The egg was taken out. There was no.
No,
here it's growing in the body.
But there is a case of abdominal pregnancy.
He calls it a blood. They all prove from him that the mother is the.
Who cares if it's inside of her?
The mother is the person.
It's still in her.
That's what Rabbi Krosner said.
But I just want to, before I go to my proof, and I want to prove that hopefully you agree. The Or Sameach, page number 56. Before I go to the next proof, that's important. Or Sameach says, can't be two hoirim. It says in Nire. אם נאמר דבחור לדבר אחד אב הבחור, אם כן, היועצת דופן בחור לדבר אחר לבלדות, ובא אחריו גם כן בחור. ושבעה ובחור לרחם ויהיו שני בחורים, וזה אי אפשר, דבחור אמר רחמן אבל הבחורים. All of a sudden in the posuk, there's one bchor and not two bchorim. However, b'beima could be two and a baran. I want to bring you the proof that I came up with, and hopefully you like it. It's page number 65. You guys learn in the Gemara is in Chulin, Kol yeter kenot uldam. What does it mean, Kol yeter kenot uldam?
If you have an extra finger.
If you have an extra finger. What does it mean if you have an extra finger? So kenot uldam. What does it mean? Does it mean that you have right now 6 fingers? A person, that's 5. 6 fingers? Or does it mean that you have 4 fingers? What do you think?
6.
No, it makes you like a treifa.
It's a treifa. So what is a treifa?
So it's absent. So, it makes
so look
like
at Rashi, page number 65. Rashi says, "Kenot uldami." You have Rashi to the left. Yeter echad kechoser echad.
Like it's 4.
V'ave kibalas regel echad v'treifa. The ave shmut aser bebeima. It means it's not 6. For 6 becomes 4.
So having 2 uteruses is really
comes the Rabban and says, no, I'm Rashi, what do you take it? 6 is 5. No, when you can't, you have one more, big deal. I think it's a machlokes now between Ramban and Rashi in our case in uterus. A normal person has how many? 1. A normal lady has 1. All of a sudden you have 2. 2? What does it mean? Kol letter cannot do that. So it means according to Rashi, she has none. So any baby that is born, there's no Pidyon Haben at all.
Developing as a baby.
According to Rambam, it would be okay.
You start out with 2 mular ducts. They're there. And they form together. It's not like you have 5 appendages and you have an extra. You had 2. Every woman has 2, except they form together to become 1.
No, but he and she ended up with 2. Like a person who has 6 digits has the same embryology.
He only had 1 before the hand was born with no fingers.
I asked him, it's a muscle. Hey, David, I asked him, when I came up with this idea, I asked him, maybe it's a muscle. It's a muscle, it's getting 2, 1, it's a muscle. It's like he says, no, it's not a muscle, it's an ever.
It's an organ.
It's an organ, it's 2 organs, it's not 1 organ.
This is clapping trephus.
I think it's either I'm a sugar or what. But think about it.
Rashi might say that woman is a treifa. If you hold an absent uterus makes you a treifa, he would hold a treifa, but that may not have anything to do with the din of better rechem. If the child according to Rashi, if the child came out, how could Rashi say it's not a better rechem?
It is not, because it's not the rechem. For naloch, it's a treifa. It's what it is. It's the yotze dofen.
Whatever you want the second one. What about the first one?
The first one. He says there's no rechem.
It goes from 2 to 9.
I think it would be hard to say. Maybe the woman is a treifa.
That's Mr. True.
But you can't say that it wasn't a better rechem.
If you want to know what the problem is when I have 6 fingers, why is it a problem? It's a bonus. I have 5 plus 1.
No,
look at it like it's 4. Copy treifa.
So this is not the same.
No, this is copying mom.
This beima. Let's talk. You know what? Let's talk about the lady. And the lady is not treifa. The beima is a treifa.
Yes. The beima would be a treifa.
The beima is treifa. The beima is treifa. It's not pidyon peter chamor. And the same with the bear.
Wait, if the bear was a treifa, there wouldn't be a...
Why do you say that because it's a treifa? Why do you say that because it's a treifa, it ruins the petter? That's the part I'm not accepting. Because it might be a treifa, but if it gave birth, why would you say there's no difference?
No, it means that the name, the ma'ud, the essence of petter, rechem doesn't exist. That's what no rechem.
It's still a yad, even if you have 6 fingers.
No,
it's still a yad.
You see, it's
you didn't say it's not a yad.
No, that's what it means.
Still a yad.
That's
but it's not 3 hands, it's 6 fingers.
Removed.
It's 6
rechems. So you have to say there's no rechem there. And if a child comes there, what's that? An optical.
I know. I think it's so beautiful. Okay.
I think it's a stress.
Anyway,
it's hard to run a basic thing. If someone has 6 fingers, how can you look at that as a bonus? A 6th finger, he has a bonus finger. How can you says? That's what he's saying. The bonus is almost no.
He asked, can you do it with 6 fingers?
No, you can't.
Can it be surgically
fused? We have everywhere else in the tire that you have.
I think it's outstanding, no?
Why does he have that on?
So there's no Petarech because there's no Rech. Theoretically, it's as if there's no Rech.
And according to the Ramban, it's not if you have 2.
Is it then considered?
How do you have 2 organs?
The only thing you can do, man, you tell me I mean, the kasha is, what does Rashi mean when he says that if you have X, you have R?
You see with the Ramban. Let's read the Ramban.
He says to make it a trophy. Is what Rashi is reading.
Look at the Ramban on the spot. Ramban is yelling on Rashi. Everybody, the Ramban here, Kol Shenat Mashu. Impossible. No, look at when
let's say you would have a 7.
Ramban is hacking on
Let's say you have a 7
Ramban is hacking on
I see why it's a deficiency. The kasha is dexterity. If a person had, Zvika, what are you saying? If he had Siamese twins, he's one with 2 heads, he couldn't put on tefillin shalosh. Because comes out, he doesn't have a head.